Well, Michael, let us welcome back our friend, Mr. Nick
Woohoo.
Petrie, to the Crew Reviews. And
There we go with a Wisconsin beer.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. This is always a high point for me.
It's good to see you, sir.
Got to get
Happy
out
New
more.
So let's hope 22 is a good year for you.
Yeah, that's right.
For all of us, let us hope.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it will be. The Runaway, speaking of 2022, is lucky number 7 in the Peter Ash series.
That's right.
I love the cover. It's got a great cover.
Yeah.
As usual. So first off, congratulations on 7 books in a series. That's quite an accomplishment in today's publishing world.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say it feels sort of surreal still to I don't know, I'm looking at my own books on my shelf and it's just like, holy cow, like I can't believe I actually did that. You'd think you'd be sort of used to it, but I'm not used to it.
That's good. I think that's what keeps the edge of the great writing is, if you ever get bored or accustomed to it, then probably isn't going to be as good a book. So
yeah, that's true.
Good to hear. Well, so let's pretend that our audience is a hitchhiker and you're picking them up and you have a mile and a half to sum up the plot of The Runaway. So give us your I won't call it an elevator pitch. We'll call it a hitchhiker pitch.
Before you tell them where you're taking them.
Oh, a mile and a half. Let's see. How fast am I driving? Let's see. So The Runaway starts with, we meet a young woman named Helen who's working the night shift at a remote gas station in Montana, right at the western edge of the Great Plains. And it's such a small town that it's not really even a town anymore. It's just 2 people. It's Helen and her boss, who owns the gas station and is also her landlord. He's also a deputy sheriff with the county. And so when he begins to suggest that she sleep with him, it becomes clear that she's not going to be able to resist him for much longer. She's got nobody to turn to. She's got no place else to go. So when a kind stranger shows up in the middle of the night at this gas station on his way west, she realizes that she's not going to have another opportunity like this. And so she walks out to the gas pumps and she says, "Hey, mister, take me with you." And he says, "Well, where do you want to go?" And her response is, "Anywhere but here." So that's the first scene is Helen fleeing her circumstances. The next chapter is Peter Ash meeting a young woman who is now, well, this is again Helen, who is now enormously pregnant, 800 miles away on a gravel road in rural Nebraska, and her car is broken down. And Peter, being the gentleman that he is, pulls over and says, can I help you with your car? Do you need a lift? And she says, "Yeah, I really need to get out of here because I'm trying to get away from my husband. And he's an ex-cop and he's a very, very bad man." Mm-hmm. And Peter, of course, never one to shy away from a way to make himself useful in the world, says, "Well, you hop in, I'll take you where you need to go." And he drives in the opposite direction, but in his rearview mirror, he sees a dust cloud. There's a vehicle coming up fast behind them and it's getting closer and closer. And obviously things go downhill from there for our hero and for Helen. Which is the way I like to do it. We like to put people in difficult circumstances and then make them worse, because that's how you write a thriller.
That's right. Now we're gonna kick the hitchhiker out. We're gonna get into a much deeper discussion. But during previous discussions, we talked about some of the things that inspired your novels. So what was the item, the news story, the road trip experience, or the other spark of inspiration that gave you entry into this particular story?
Well, it's interesting. This story started, I kind of gave myself an assignment, which I often do. For this book, the assignment was to write a story that was a little bit more intimate. My books often have sort of a larger than life component. The last one was about sort of cutting edge technology. I've written about sort of the new cannabis industry in Colorado. I've written about race and class and music in Memphis. So this one I wanted to tell a more intimate story where the stakes were smaller, but also you could feel them a little bit more intensely.
Yeah.
And so that was that's the thing I sort of put up on my bullet board when I start. And then Helen just sort of showed up. and I was thinking about, so, you know, somebody at risk, somebody who was alone and vulnerable. And I didn't think she would have such a big role in this book. And she has you know, probably half the book is Helene's story.
Right.
And that was not planned. She is just such an interesting character, strong and you know, sarcastic, and you know, to me, she just sort of took over the storytelling, and I just kind of, you know, ran with it. I tried to sort of, you know, keep listening and to figure out what was going to happen to her, and then I had to decide what her relationship was going to be with Peter. It's the series is the Peter Ash series, so this has got to be, they have to be in relation to each other in a certain way. And so then the structure of this book, which is really these two parallel stories, kind of formed at that point.
Yeah. Well, so at the beginning, Peter Ash is driving through exotic Nebraska, possibly counting telephone poles to keep from careening off the road.
You have not driven in Nebraska, at least in the parts that I have been. I find the Great Plains to be absolutely gorgeous. I mean, it's not Colorado. It doesn't have those epic mountains, but I think the plains there's just so much sky.
Yeah.
And those giant clouds blowing across like this, you know, these battleships just going through the sky. I guess I feel passionate in my defense of Nebraska.
You do, because my family's from Lincoln, and
oh, yeah. There you go. So you know, I take it all back. I apologize.
They don't quite see it that way. But so why set off in Nebraska? What was your draw, other than, you know, wide open, you know, the rolling plains? Why is Peter in? I mean, we know he's on a road trip, but why did you pick Nebraska of all places?
Well, because each book is essentially set in a different place. So I'm often reacting to the last book I wrote. So the last book I wrote was a very urban book, and so I thought, okay, I need to be back in the countryside.
Yeah.
And then I think about the parts of the country where I haven't kind of written about before. And so and I wanted something that was dramatic, that was also something that you know, there was something else happening, and so part of the story, it's not a huge part of the story, is sort of the crisis of rural America, how towns are shrinking, and the jobs are fewer and farther between, and so that's really part of what's kind of underneath this story.
Got it.
And I wanted to write about that as well. I live in Wisconsin, which is a farm state, and you know, we're quite aware of that here as well.
Right.
And I'm always trying to, you know, I'm interested in America, and I'm interested in the different kind of cultures that we have, and the different sort of geographies and landscapes that we have. So I'm always trying to sort of find something new to illuminate in a book. And that, for some reason, that just ended up being Nebraska. Although actually there is another reason, which is that my son and his friends took a road trip a couple of years ago for spring break. And the pictures that he took were really compelling. And so I thought, well, I should do that. I should go get in the car. And I finally did.
Yeah.
I drove, you know, again, state highways and gravel roads all the way west into central Nebraska and back home through South Dakota and Minnesota. And it's just a beautiful, and really an unforgiving landscape at times.
South Dakota has both sides of the coin in one state. Sure. Yeah.
So I don't know. In part, I'm just trying to, you know, through this character and these stories I'm telling, to showcase a piece of America at the same time.
Sure. All right. Cool.
Well, of all your antagonists, this might be the most terrifying of all for me. I've met Ray before. Maybe not a guy who's done everything he's done, but though you never know. But that charming sociopath type, and I've seen this sort of victimization and grooming take place from the outside, not from the inside, but it's once you see it, you kind of recognize it. And so all of that was very authentic and visceral to me. I saw Ray in such a three-dimensional light. I mean, he was very real to me. So to me, he was as terrifying as anybody you've written. So everyone I know who's ever met you considers you one of the nicest guys they know, even Margaret. And so
sometimes.
From what dark corner of your imagination did Ray spring forth?
That's a really good question. I am not sure. I think one of the reasons, this is a funny thing about the crime writing community, is that it's full of really nice people. And I don't think that's true of other literary communities. And I think part of the reason why this is such a nice group of people is that we get to work out all of our issues by killing people, right? I mean, we get to work it all out on the page.
Yeah.
You know, if I wrote little domestic dramas, right? You know, I'm sure I would you know, end up shooting somebody at the end of the day. I mean, I live a domestic drama, much as I love my wife. This is just the nature of our lives. So, you know, I'm not quite sure. I was looking for someone who would really be kind of Peter's opposite.
Oh yeah.
And Roy again just kind of showed up, and he showed up as this sort of aw shucks kind of kindly stranger. And it becomes something else entirely. And part of the fun was sort of figuring out exactly how bad it could get, and how bad of a person he is. And it turns out he's a pretty bad guy.
Yeah, how about it?
Yeah, he's not a good one.
Yeah. But you know, the villains are always so much fun because we do, and I hear this from other writers too, we do get to sort of exercise our demons and to you know, sort of think about you know, all of the horrible ways there are to be in the world.
Right.
So I'm glad Roy works for you though. It was both fun and a little you know, sort of spine tingling to sort of have him emerge like that on the page.
And that's a great word for it. You did a masterful job of peeling back layers at a time, because every time you thought you knew really who he was and what he was about, he kind of took you to a deeper, you know, darker
leading you
place.
down a dark path. Yeah.
And so that was really, I mean, honestly, I loved it. And he was definitely one of the more terrifying protagonists or antagonists.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that. That's the goal, is to just, you know, continue to terrify people as much as I can.
Well, on the opposite coin, I mean, we always have a lot of laughs when we talk, you know, even off air. And sometimes Peter Ash is in these really dangerous situations. You come up with an almost absurd description that just, I busted out laughing at one, and I got to point it out. So he's holding a feral dog named Cupcake on his lap on the back of a pink Yamaha 250, driven by this female construction worker named Bobby, going after the guys who were trying to kill him and stole all of his stuff. Like, how many beers did you have to come up with that particular scenario? Because it almost sounded like something happened to you in high school that you were trying to work out.
Well, that's never happened to me. Although I did.
A friend, I get it. Okay.
Right. Yeah. No, it happened to a friend. I did briefly have a Yamaha enduro bike before it was legal for me to own it and ride it.
Yeah.
So that piece is true to life, although from many years ago. But you know, for me, it's like the frog in the pot, right? I start with a scene, and then something happens. And then I think, well, what needs to happen after that? And what needs to happen after that? And things just sort of pile on each other. And it's not like I started out saying Peter is gonna meet a woman driving operating a backhoe in a farm field, and he's going to end up on the back of a motorcycle with a half coyote dog, driven by a lesbian on a pink motorcycle. That's not where I'm starting. It's just where it ends up. And
well, it's so run of the mill. I mean, you obviously.
I mean, we're talking about tropes.
So cliche.
Well, the thing is, so part of what I have people remark on my characters a lot, and they've also remarked that a lot of thrillers are written by white guys, and they're populated, almost exclusively by white guys, and people have have remarked that my characters are diverse in lots of different ways, and I mean that's the world we live in. Those are people that I know. Those are, I mean, I used to work construction. I knew any number of lesbian plumbers, equipment operators. That's a part of the world that I know.
Yeah.
So in part, I'm just trying to show the world that I live in a certain way. Although of course it's always a little bit over the top, because that's what fiction is.
Yeah, sure. I don't know the dog. I think I've owned one or two of those in the past.
Now you touched on her earlier, but I want to talk about Helen. It would have been easy to make her a cliche, kind of a boring archetype that we've seen before, but she's an extremely rich and vivid character, and her complexities are so well rendered. As I said with Ray, the trauma she experienced both before the narrative begins and after really brought her to life for me, because not her specific, some of her specific trauma. We all in our lives probably know somebody who has gone through something similar to at least part of what she's gone through. So I felt like I know this person well, but it got me thinking about Peter and Lewis and June and their common experience with trauma. There's a phrase, they say drama is conflict, but in the Peter Ash series, you could say that drama is trauma. It rhymes, but that's not why you'd say it. But from the static on, what draws you to that theme?
Well, I'm interested in books where, in stories about people who are living on the edges of society, right? Again, I'm not sure I would write a book about a banker, sure, going to work, although, never say never. But it's why I started writing about veterans to begin with, is because most of America doesn't really get it. We do not, the military community is a small and insular part of our country. It used to be everybody served, and we had compulsory service as well. And now that's just not how it is. It's a all volunteer service, and it's almost a trade that's passed down through families in a tradition. And certain communities, certain parts of the country, there's a lot more service than others. And that was kind of what got me started, was sort of, let's take a closer look at this little piece of America. But there are lots of ways to live on the edge of society. And if you are somebody, again, Helen is somebody who is just on the margin. She's barely hanging on by her fingernails. And I know a number of people who have had experiences similar to hers. One of the really interesting pieces of the Me Too movement was the number of conversations I had with people that I'd known for a long time about their experiences with similar things. And not to get too serious here, but those stories are everywhere. It's just not stories that people necessarily want to broadcast to the universe. So I'm just really interested in people who are living, a vivid and sort of full-on experience of life. That's the kind of life that I'm interested in living. I've always liked people who, are in hot pursuit of whatever it is that they want to do in the world. So those are, that's what draws me. And I think, I think there's, depending on how you choose to define trauma, to come back to the original question, which surprisingly I was able to do.
Shock. We're back.
We all have those things in our past, whether they're big or small, that stay with us, that define us. And I think that's really interesting. And I think that is what makes us who we are as human beings. And I think that, I'm not interested in characters who are just, with chiseled features and excellent abs, and they only think pure thoughts. That's just not interesting.
Don't
to me
talk
at
bad
all.
About me like that.
I'm sorry, Mike. I know.
Other than that, we're interested.
Thank you for not showing us your abs right now. I appreciate that. Right, but so I'm interested in complexity. I'm interested in the many ways there are to experience the world, and that's not to be too grandiose about it, but that's what I'm interested in writing about, and I hope that's what people are interested in reading about.
Yeah.
Well,
Good point.
there's a line in it that, that kind of to go with the trauma thing. You said, I think Lewis says, brother, you and I know damage don't matter. We all got damage. It's what you do. It's something. What matters is what you do with it.
Yeah,
Something
what you do with it. Yeah, yeah.
And that's always been, not those exact words, but that exact thought has been key to something I've always told my kids about, and tried to impart to them, is that, listen, we're all gonna get our faces punched in, figuratively, literally, whatever.
Yeah.
And you can complain, like you can say, oh, that guy, he was abused, so that's why he abused his kid. No, that's not why he abused his kid. He abused his kid because he had a weak reaction to what happened to him, and to try to explain to them that it's not what happens to you, it's what you do with it. And I love that whole sequence with
right.
I thought that kind of encapsulated the theme of the book in a way I didn't expect until I read it. So,
well, thank you. Well, and again, you can I think it's important to understand why people do what they do, but you also, I mean, we all have free will, right? You get to choose. You get to choose how you live your life and how you react to your situation, and you can react well, and you can lift yourself up and those around you, or you can react the other way, in which case, hopefully the hammer comes down.
Right. I want to go back to a little bit what we were touching on earlier. You talked about Helen and Peter, and not only the kind of the dual storylines that merge, obviously, but you also went to a then and a now. And from a new writer standpoint, talk about risky as hell and trying to make that work. So did you have to put any additional thought process into making and meshing that to the way you did it in this book is phenomenal, but did you have extra work both in editing and writing to merge those in the way that you found best fitting for the storyline?
Yeah, I ended up doing I ended up blocking out sort of both storylines and figuring out sort of how many words in a chapter and how long, what was a good place to end, not only a chapter, but then a Helen section. It was definitely a balancing act.
Yeah.
But, I've done sort of versions of this with other books. And it's terrifying because you really don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
But thank you for saying it does, because I send it off to my editor, and I'm like, so, do we need more identifiers? Do we need more? And I sort of thought that maybe we would track because the Peter piece really takes place over a couple of days. The Helen piece takes place over, essentially 8 months. And so do we track it with the month and the year? Do we, and then I sort of thought, well, what if it's just sort of then and now? And that was what we ended up with, to sort of keep it simple. And so that people don't say, no, wait a minute, when was this? And to just sort of, all you really have to do is divide the two timelines.
Right.
And then at a certain point, they join together. And because of the point of view, right, one is Peter and one is Helen, once you've established the time and how things shift, you do have to show time moving forward.
Yeah.
And I'm always very careful to have time and place markers, because I always hate it when I'm reading a book and I'm like, no, wait a minute, where the hell am I now?
Right.
Exactly. It's 3 days later. Is it 2 days later? Or, that stuff drives me nuts. And I think that's just sort of, that's the careful craftsmanship piece.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't want a reader to be lost. But the reader also will do a lot of that work on their own. All you have to do is teach them early on, this is how the story's built.
Okay.
And after that, I think it's not that hard to figure out, as long as you're doing your due diligence and you're letting them know kind of where you are in time and space.
Would you have tried to do that at the beginning of your career?
Oh, no, God, no. Although it's interesting that my first book that got published, The Drifter, there's a similar set of sequences, right? So there's Peter's point of view, and then there's these little, very short chapters from the point of view of a guy that I start out calling the man in the black chore coat.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the first third of that book without knowing that other character, the man in the black short coat, would be there. I didn't really know, but I knew I needed something that was going to, because the beginning of the book unfolds not slowly, I don't think, but the plot is not readily apparent necessarily.
Okay.
You really are meeting Peter, and you're diving into his head, and you're seeing what he's doing in his life. So I needed something to tell the reader, wait a minute, there's something else happening here.
Right.
There's something bigger and more important. But I didn't need much, just a little bit. So then I wrote the first one of those, and I thought, okay, that's the first chapter. That's my prologue. And then I thought, well, what's the next one like? So then I kind of figured out where to put the next couple, and I wrote them, a couple of months apart, and I figured out where to fit them in. And then I thought, all right, so now I've got 4 of these with the man with the black short coat. So now I have to figure out, so what are the other points in that sequence, and how does it end?
Yeah.
And so then I wrote those all at once, and I slotted them in, and I moved them around a few times. But that was much easier because they're really only, none of those short coat questions or sections is more than 1,000 words. So it's not like I was pulling people out of Peter's story.
Right.
But then the end of that book, I did something where the last 50 pages, maybe, or 60 pages is suddenly told from 3 new points of view who we've not heard from throughout the book. We see Lewis's point of view for the first time. We see Dinah's point of view for the first time. And we get Charlie's, Dinah's 12-year-old son, we get his point of view as well.
Right.
And I just it was the only way I could think of for the reader to see those things happen, because Peter wasn't there.
Right.
Everything else is Peter is present for every event.
Right.
And I just thought, I have no idea if this is going to work. And I sent it off, and my editor was like, no, this is just fine. But in part, I mean, you do really have to trust your own instinct, and you have to trust the reader, and the reader will make great leaps for you. If you have shown yourself to be trustworthy as a narrator, if you have shown yourself to be fair and honest in your dealings with the reader will take those leaps with you.
Got it.
Well, I enjoyed the then and now, because I've read some books where it was like Monday morning, Tuesday afternoon, and like it's jumping back between 2 storylines, and one storyline is jumping days, and sometimes you're just like, wait a second, how many days have passed?
It's too precise. It's too much information.
Yes, exactly. And I like this better because you know both stories are progressing in a linear fashion, and you know which story you're in, and it's
you're not trying to satisfy the actual time and date.
To me it takes all the distraction away from the story. So I enjoyed that. We actually talked about that before you came on.
Well, great, thank you.
So when I'm writing, sometimes I have an idea for an action set piece and have no idea where it might fit in the story. And then other times the set pieces just occur organically as you're writing the story. What is the process for you? Do you ever have an action sequence pop into your head and you think independently, and you think, oh, I got to find a place for that? Or are they all a natural outcropping of the story?
They're almost all natural. I have, I was thinking with this book that I hadn't seen Peter on a motorcycle before. And I thought this would be a good kind of book. And I had done some underage dirt biking myself. And so I sort of thought, well, okay, that'd be fun to do that. But I didn't know where it would fit, or if this would be the book, or even what that scene would be. And it would have been really easy to have, to do, sort of an action movie thing where, they're leaping across the hills, and the dirt bike being chased by giant trucks. And, I'm less interested in that kind of thing. And it just turned out that there was a dirt bike, but it wasn't Peter's, and Peter wasn't riding it. Peter wasn't driving it. Peter was riding it. So I kind of think about the kinds of things. I had been thinking really since the second book that I wanted to have a scene where there was a hammer fight, because Peter was a carpenter, and I thought that would be really vivid and really violent. And I just kind of it's in the corner of my mind. And then the end of the third book ends up being a fight between a person with a hammer and a person with a combat tomahawk. And I, that was a bunch of fun to write, and that sort of scratched that itch. But I don't really have a list of things I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I do think it's time to do something that's a little over the top. I think that's a little bit part of this series, is that everything is a little more so.
There's been times when I've read passages that I wrote months ago, maybe even years ago, and I think to myself, where the hell did that come from? Like that was never a conscious thought of mine. It just came out. So there was a part that struck me early in this book, and Peter's lost his truck. He's lost his firearms. He doesn't have his wallet, and he's running through a stream near night. It's going to be freezing overnight. And it kind of read in part, 4 strangers were trying to find him and end his life. Was it wrong? He might be having a little bit of fun. Were you pre-planning to kind of put Peter in such a dire position and then say, he's kind of actually enjoying this in a strange way? Or how did that come out?
Well, there are moments like that in many of my books. And I think that is part of what makes Peter appealing to people, and also what makes Peter kind of real to people with his background, is that, the dirty little secret of war is that it's fun. You get to blow shit up, and you get to play run and chase and hide. And that is, for a lot of people, that is one of the appeals of joining the Army or the Marine Corps or whatever. You get to do this crazy stuff. All of the advertising is, trying to get people to sign up is geared to that impulse, right? You see somebody, sticking his head up out of a tank. You see somebody jumping out of a helicopter. That's what they're selling to America's young men and women. And that is in part why people keep going back. And that's a part of Peter's character as well. What's the line? There's the sun never shines so bright as when someone is trying to kill you.
Yeah. Or it was sparkly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The world was never so sparkly as when someone was trying to kill you. I remember that too. Yeah.
I think that's a real thing. And I've had moments of risk when the world just becomes much more vivid, and that's Peter's take on life. And I think that's if it wasn't fun, he wouldn't keep getting himself into so much trouble. He's been messing around for 7 books here. He really ought to figure this out and stay home and, I don't know, raise some kids, get a job, but he does not seem to be doing that.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I think it's like athletes who retire and then they can never get that buzz back.
Yeah, the locker room is missing. Yeah.
Well, and I'm a mountain biker, and part of what makes that appealing is I've had a pretty bad bike accident and tore up my shoulder, had to have surgery. But I get back on the bike. I like the adrenaline. I like the risk.
Yeah.
It would help if I were a better mountain biker. I'm not a very good mountain biker, but it's fun.
I get it.
Well, Mr. Petrie, you have reached the end of the normal portion of our show.
Uh-oh. Is this the abnormal portion then? That's what's coming up?
Of course. It's always
more abnormal than usual.
But anyway, so not that we won't talk about this, but this is a hell of a book. As we go into the lightning round, I just want to remind everybody to pick it up. Its publication date is the 18th. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. 18th of January.
Nice.
January 18th. Okay. Get it. All right. So I'm going to start with the lightning round. You're lucky that Chris is not available tonight because you only get 6, horrible questions.
Wait a minute. I feel like I'm getting gypped. I want to.
We can come up with some stuff if you really want.
Yeah. Off the cuff, we're great. Let me tell you. No, so my first question, and it's too bad Margaret's not around to answer this, but what is a bad habit, flaw, or vice that you wish you did not have? Or since she's not there, more importantly, Margaret wishes you didn't have.
Well, what I'm trying to work on these days is procrastination and surfing the web, and just the amount of time I waste in a given day is it drives me nuts and is really appalling. And so that's kind of my current effort. So that's, other than that, I have no bad habits. It's all, I'm all sweetness and light.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, we're getting I'm getting a text right now. No, I don't know a writer that's not dealing with that problem.
Yeah. Ding. Another message.
I feel like the dog from Up sometimes, just like look at my phone. Why am I looking at my phone? Put my phone down.
Yeah, I actually just had to turn my phone on to do not disturb because it turns back on at 5 o'clock. So,
oh man.
Okay, question number 2. How are you most like Peter Ash, and how are you least like him besides body count?
How am I most like Peter Ash? How am I least like Peter Ash? Well, I'm definitely not a dangerous man. I will say that. I'm a lover, not a fighter. How am I most like Peter Ash? I don't know. I think the part of me that I have a very strong moral sense, a strong sense of right and wrong, and how I think people should live in the world. And it's not, who you sleep with or where you go to church. It really is, how you behave towards other people. And I think Peter really kind of shares that. My phone will just not shut up. That's a big piece of Peter as well. And it's part of why he gets himself in trouble, is because he wants to be useful. He wants to help. And I guess that's another piece of me and in Peter, is the idea of being of use in the world, which I feel really strongly about.
That's a Midwestern quality for sure, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
My final question. So we were under the understanding, we thought this was with Barbara Puel's clients. So Don Bentley put Chris Albanese on page 37 of his last book. And Mike and I were under the impression that you were to put one of us in this book, and then
reading diligently for our
supposed
name.
to put the other one in a book. And I don't know, we just was it edited out? Was that the issue, or did you?
Yeah, no, my editor said that was just strict pandering, and she wasn't going to allow it.
She said, "Who?"
It was strict pandering. Damn it! Damn that Don Bentley.
Well, what I don't want to do is to be nice, and I mean I've put friends in books and generally made them out to be terrible people. So that, just so you know, that if that's what happens,
typecasting
how
is
it's
okay.
going to be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
you might have a genetic disorder. You might have a sexually transmitted disease.
We talk about life realism.
My former neighbor was a penis enhancement surgeon.
I missed my calling.
Yeah. So just so you know, that's kind of how it rolls.
Hey,
right.
you know what?
All right, I'll keep it in mind.
That's Don Bentley killed us, listed us in a casualties in his first book.
Yeah.
But he listed me by last name. And I'm like, hell, everybody thinks that's Mark Cameron. Nobody thinks that's me. I'm like, thanks for nothing, man. But
oh my god.
No respect. No respect.
No respect, exactly. All right, Michael, you were.
So I'm up. So this was the arc, and this question it goes into the title: was it publisher or was it Petrie? So on page 26, I'm going to read a sentence, and I want to know who got this. She hadn't get the lids on quite right.
Whoops.
Was that Petrie or publisher?
Oh, I'm sure that was Petrie. Hang on. I need to see if that's in the real book.
It's
Page
not
26.
Oh, thank goodness.
I don't know, man.
Thank
Might want to check the hardcover.
Yeah.
It's like, oh boy.
That is one of the things about writing quickly, is that all that stuff. And I'm totally I'm a writer and a rewriter, but there's a point at which you just can't see anything
You
anymore.
don't see it anymore.
It's
You
all
just
here.
read right
It's not-
past it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
So
number
no,
two.
that's embarrassing.
Yeah, I was going to say something. I was going to private message you, but we'll do it publicly. All right. According to the Janka scale, what is the hardest wood in the world?
Geez, I don't know.
Some kind of carpenter you were.
I know. Well, I the hard stuff is no fun to work. So,
Yeah, true. All right. It's the Australian bullock.
whoa, that's good to know.
It's 5 times more dense than hickory.
Wow.
Like, it's called ironwood. I mean, for a good reason.
Well, there's American ironwood as well, but that's
Right.
not 5 times more dense than hickory, for God's sake.
Right. All right. So thank God you're not carpenter anymore. Okay. Number 3. Are the rumors true that your New Year's resolution is to be less of a lazy bastard this year?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I just
And
want.
where did you hear that is what I want to know.
Did Margaret mention something about
That's
that?
probably true.
Yeah, I think that's where it was. So
That goes along with that whole procrastination.
all right, we're good.
Fine, we let you off
She
easy.
probably didn't use the word bastard though.
No, she calls you something pretty rotten last time.
Oh, well, that's just affection. That's all.
It's a pet name, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was lovely.
gotcha.
It was lovingly rotten.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
Yes, yes. She says she's a lady, but she drops the F-bomb quite a bit.
Just got to get her point across. All right.
You know what? That means she's a woman because
There you go. Yeah, I like that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Nick, you came out unscathed, but the reader won't. This book is going to leave a mark.
I like that.
Yeah, that's right.
It really is. My I don't know if favorite's the right word, but probably the most powerful antagonist that I've read in a while.
Yeah, for sure.
Fantastic job. You know we love you as a writer, and you just keep putting them out, and we'll keep reading them.
That's right.
Well, that's very kind of you both. Thank you very much.
3 of a year, please. That'd be good.
Yeah. And it's nice to see you, even if it's only virtually, but I hope we can raise a glass someplace actual.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no kidding. We're waiting for that.
I'll make sure I keep my cup with me.
Yeah, that's right. At any moment, you never know when I'll show up.
Do we have that restraining order, John, that we can talk about?
Shh, that's private. That's
Okay.
a personal matter.
All right. Well,
January 18th.
All right.
Get it, folks.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's been a pleasure again.
Miguel, another great show with another great author, old friend Nick Petrie. The Runaway is his 7th Peter Ash novel, which blows my mind. But it doesn't surprise me whatsoever because the man can put words together like very few people.
That's right.
Had a blast tonight as always. Join us next Monday for another phenomenal show with a phenomenal writer.
Wisconsin beer, baby. Leinenkugel.
Wisconsin beer and frozen water.
Mm.